It's just going to be a few minutes while we wait for the call to build, and we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. If you're here in the Zoom, let us know your name and where you're from in the chat. Also, you can help us get more folks on the call by sharing out this broadcast link on your own social media, like your Facebook and your Twitter. The links are being dropped in the chat now, and we want to recognize everyone who's able to join us now. Again, you can join us by going to ourrev.us/Zoom, and that'll bring you right into the Zoom room. We want to thank you all for choosing to spend your time here with us tonight. These calls are when Our Revolution members gather together to strategize, organize, and mobilize to make democracy work for us all. I'm going to go ahead and take a few minutes to recognize those of us that are joining us here in the chat. So many people across the nation, y'all are joining us. I see Ray from Houston. Shout out to Texas, fellow Texan there. We also see Carrie from NIPAN. Welcome, Carrie. Good to see you here. Mary is joining us from Lee, Erie, Pennsylvania, it looks like. Lucera Mesa from OR, South Carolina. Good to see you here. Burton from Ohio joining us. Let's see who else. Catherine Wolf from Tucson, Arizona. Diane from Ohio. Good to see you, Diane. Love the work y'all are doing there in Ohio, helping Nina. Dan from Massachusetts. Pat from Nashville, Tennessee. Sasha from the Seattle area. Again, if you guys can join us in the Zoom, that's ourrev.us/Zoom, and that'll bring you right here into the Zoom link. You can also tell your friends to join us that way, and that'll help us build this call. We want to thank you all again for joining us here tonight. If you're not already, we want to invite you to become an official Our Revolution member right now. If you're in the Zoom room, we will drop the link. If you're listening by cell phone, you can go to ourrev.us/2022member. That's ourrev.us/2022member, and that'll bring you right to our membership link. We want to thank everyone who's a dues paying member. We could not do this work and continue this work without you. For $5, $10, or even $27 a month, you can help fund our work to elect progressive candidates and fight for our working class agenda. We're up against the right-wing authoritarians and the corporate establishment, but we're proving the people united can never be defeated. And if you're listening on the phones, you can press *3 and an operator will sign you up. Let us know in the chat if you signed up to become a member. We want to thank every single one of our dues paying members out there. Again, we could not do this work without you. As the call is building, I just want to welcome everyone to this broadcast tonight. Our Monday night broadcasts give you all of the information you need to know about where the revolution is, where it's heading, and how you can plug yourself into the work that's being done all across the nation, state by state, county by county, candidate, campaign to campaign. Again, if you're in the Zoom, let us know your name, where you're from. For those of you listening on the phones or watching live on social media, we'd love for you to transfer to the Zoom room for that interactive experience. You can just go to ourrev.us/Zoom. That's ourrev.us/Zoom, and that'll take you right into the Zoom room. I can see here so many people joining us. D says that he's joining us from, or they're joining us from the deepest, darkest parts of Texas. Paula from Burlington, Vermont. David from La Grande, Oregon. Haley from Michigan. Bruce, Jay, Coral Springs, Florida. So many people, and it's important for us to meet each other and know that this work is being done. Sometimes in rural areas, in those small towns, you can feel alone as a bold progressive working. So we need to get to know each other, and we need to network and begin to know those projects we're each working on. Again, my name is Christy Laura, and I'm with the National Organizing Team, and we have an exciting call for you tonight. We're so glad you're here, with thousands of people joining us every other Monday night on these calls, learning about the organizing that's happening across the nation. Our Revolution board member, Jane Kleeb, will be joining us. and we'll delve into the work of our progressive voting bloc within the GNC, a board member for Our Revolution National. And we'll talk with progressive candidates running from city, state, and federal seats, including Erica Smith, who's running for U.S. Congress in North Carolina 1, Anna Maria Archila for Lieutenant Governor of New York, and Zachary Parker for D.C. Council. Also, stay tuned for an update on Medicare for All in Congress. We have to continue that work to make sure that healthcare is a human right. We also want each and every one of you to know that this work takes all of our work, all of our hands. You can sign up to join our activist work in the phone bank for us that I help lead with a group of wonderful, amazing phone bank force members. We just kicked off the 2022 primaries with a striking blow here in Texas, and we want to carry that momentum into the midterms. You can join the phone bank force by going to ourrev.us/phone bank, and that will be dropped in the chat. Again, that's ourrev.us/phone bank, and that'll take you directly to that information. We've got over 3,000 people on the lines right now, and we'd love for you to hop on to our virtual community here in Zoom. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get this call started. We want to let you know that you can visit us at ourrev.us/Rev Report 2022. That's REV Report 2022. And I'm going to hand this call out to Our Revolution National Coordinator, Hal Ginsberg. Hal, off to you.
Thank you so much, Christy, and good evening and welcome to our National Organize to Win broadcast. My name is Hal Ginsberg and my co-host is organizer Anna Marta Vishke. Because of you, Our Revolution is the largest grassroots funded progressive political action organization in the country, and we are producing results. Tonight, we're organizing our people power into action to advance our progressive mission through the rest of 2022. In just a bit, movement leaders and working class candidates will join us. They are fighting to grow our power at every level of government within the political party system itself as part of our inside-outside strategy. Our Revolution board member, Jane Kleeb, is here for a deep dive into our progressive voting bloc inside the DNC and how we can use that power to influence the rules and actions of the Democratic Party. Then we're digging into campaign strategy and purpose with three great candidates. Erica Smith is running for U.S. Congress in North Carolina's 1st Congressional District. Anna Maria Archila is running for Lieutenant Governor of New York. And Zachary Parker is running for D.C. Council Ward 5. We'll also have an update on Medicare for All in Congress. So this is an exciting call. Anna Marta, over to you for more of our
Thank you so much.
Update.
Thank you so much, Hal. Briefly, let's look at some updates from the past 2 weeks and how this work fits into our 4-point plan to build a more progressive America. As many of you know, our theory of change involves 4 main categories of action: defending democracy, electing progressive champions, fighting for progressive policies, and transforming the Democratic Party. And let's start with the first one, defending democracy. This is an important one, and it takes many forms, from the fight for voting rights to delivering material change to restore voters' faith that democracy can work for all of us. So this week, 4 brave Our Revolution Georgia members took a stand for democracy by stepping forward to file a legal challenge against the unconstitutional candidacy of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Our partners at Free Speech for People are representing these courageous citizens in this fight against the far right and their assaults on free and fair elections. Greene, as I'm sure you all know, has been an outspoken proponent of Stop the Steal before, during, and after the January 6th riot on the Capitol. The 14th Amendment prevents insurrectionists from the ballot. So let's support our Georgia members in this fight. You can become a member to help fund these challenges. There are plenty of insurrectionists to root out of office. Go to the link that's going to be dropped in the chat, or you can sign up on the phone as well if you press *3. Hal, back to you.
Thanks so much, Anna Marta. And Archila Green isn't the only right-winger we've upset this week, and loved doing so. Senator Lindsey Graham railed against Our Revolution Executive Director Joseph Geevarghese during the Senate confirmation hearing for Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson. Graham was waxing wroth because Joseph helped forward a push by Graham and Representative Jim Clyburn for anti-labor Judge Michelle Childs to fill the open seat left by Justice Stephen Breyer. To Biden's credit, and as a reflection of our grassroots power, the president listened to us. And Judge Jackson, a former public defender and pro-labor jurist, is on her way to the high court. Here are some of the progressive policies we're fighting for right now. Big Oil thinks they have us over a barrel as they use Putin's murderous invasion of Ukraine and the ongoing pandemic as an excuse to price gouge Americans and rake in record profits. Our revolution, though, is fighting alongside our progressive partners in Congress for a windfall profits tax to put a stop to their war profiteering, cap gas prices, and put money back in the pockets of consumers. Remember, though, the best way to seize power from the petrocrats, including Putin and the multinational oil corporations, is to reduce consumption and move as quickly as possible to clean, green energy. California Congressman Ro Khanna and U.S. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island are helping us do that with their bill that they introduced last week calling for a 50% tax on oil barons' excessive profits and for revenues to be distributed to regular folks in payments of up to $360 a year. We think this is a good start to beat back the corporate greed of big oil that is destroying our planet by ending all fossil fuel subsidies and demanding that the Biden administration take meaningful steps to cut consumption of fossil fuels. Anna Marta, over to you for more on what we expect from the Biden-Harris administration.
Thank you so much, Hal. That's right. Our revolution is teaming up with the Congressional Progressive Caucus to push for 55 executive orders Biden can deliver for voters ahead of the midterms. With his pen, Biden could declare a climate emergency, unlocking the presidential powers to ban new fossil fuel leasing on public lands and employ the Defense Production Act to ramp up renewable energy development. He could also lower drug prices, increase wages, implement fair tax changes, and cancel all federal student loan debt, and much, much more. So we're urging President Biden and the Democrats to deliver now, while they still hold the White House and Congress. Doing so is critical to earning trust and votes come November. And we also promised you an update on Medicare for All. In Congress, we can't have a call without talking about Medicare for All. Progressives in Congress, with the pressure that we created on the outside with our movement, have put Medicare for All back on the table, and it will be discussed as a route to universal health care at the House Oversight Committee hearing tomorrow morning. And our Revolution members will be on site, of course. We cannot miss this hearing from 8:15 a.m. to 10 a.m. We are going to be rallying outside the hearing, rallying politicians to support it. So if you're in the DC area, sign up to join us at the link, which is being dropped in the chat. But real quick, before we start bringing in our guests, we need you to join us in this fight. We cannot do this alone. Our Revolution members play a vital role in this movement for change. In return, they know they are making an impact for a better world. But here is a few more reasons to sign up and join us today. You get a beautiful, nicely designed membership card that you see on the screen. You will also vote on our endorsed candidates in critical races, so you'll have your voices heard. You'll help us craft our platform and strategy. You will stay plugged into ways to take action, which is the surest, quickest way to cure despair. And each quarter you'll receive, of course, a letter reporting on our work and all of the results that we have achieved together. Because we are investing together our time and our treasure, and a better world is our return on that investment. So become a member now by clicking on the link in the chat, or you can just go to ourrev.us/ 2022 member. And of course, if you're on the phones, and we have thousands of members all the time, all throughout these calls on the phones, you can press *3 and an operator will help you sign up. So that's all for me for now. Hal, back to you.
Thank you so much, AMV. Just want folks to know that I'll be at the Medicare rally tomorrow morning outside of the Rayburn building in downtown DC by 8:30 a.m. So love to see you down there if you can make it. And now on to our final update, which brings us to our first guest. Jane Kleeb is joining us to talk about how we're building progressive power within the party structure. At the Democratic National Committee winter meeting last week, our revolution leaders within the DNC took the next step in our push to transform the party into a truly inclusive, representative, transparent, and democratic party. We're getting closer to reversing the top-down structure of the DNC. For now, though, it does appear that party apparatchiks and a money-driven consultant class are trying to maintain their grip on the party. We're out to reverse that. And our first guest is leading the charge. Jane Kleeb is the Nebraska Democratic Party chair. She's an Our Revolution board member dedicated to the progressive cause. Questions for Jane? You're on Zoom, put them right in the Q&A. If you're on the phones, press *3 and an operator will pass it along. Jane Kleeb, welcome and thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. Our Revolution, of course, has a special place in my heart. I was a founding board member, still a proud board member, still one of those proud Bernie Democrats that doesn't shy away from supporting and endorsing all the policies that we're all fighting for. Because in the end, that's what the Democratic Party should be fighting for, making sure that our party and our policies truly reflect what working class and middle class families are facing on a daily basis. You know, when I heard the report on the updates about the windfall tax credit, I work every day with my paying job because in a lot of red state parties, chairs don't get paid. Blue state and purple state parties, many of them do, but in red states, there's not enough budget to make that happen. So my full-time paying job, which I wouldn't change for the world, is I run a group called BOLD, and we work with farmers, ranchers, and tribes to stop risky pipelines. And the windfall tax credit that Representative Ro Khanna and Senator Whitehouse are working for, and Our Revolution is really lifting up their work, is critical because these pipelines continue to get built across communities because they know that they can continue to profit on the backs of landowners' property through eminent domain, as well as making sure that they're taking advantage of sovereign tribal nations. And so thank you, Our Revolution, for always being on the forefront of these issues, not only for party reform, which I promise I'm talking about right now, but also for climate change and protecting people's property rights and tribal nations' sovereign rights. So first, let me just say that, oftentimes when folks think of the DNC, they think of something that party elites do, or that insiders do, and that consultants do. But the reality is the DNC is and should be made up of state parties and people that get elected at the state party level from the grassroots, and not something that party consultants essentially take advantage of all the resources that are coming to the table. And I will say, coming from a red state, I have been involved in party politics now for over 25 years. I used to be the head of the Young Democrats of America. So I'm not somebody who is like, burn it all down, the party sucks, and all that other kind of rhetoric. I'm like, no, I believe in the Democratic Party. I believe in the values that the Democratic Party has, like so many of you do, but I also believe in reform. And I don't think that reform has to be scary. Reform doesn't mean that we're against President Biden or that we don't support full throat Chair Harrison, because we do. Everything that Chair Harrison is doing, I fully support. I definitely support President Biden and his initiatives and reforms that he's doing all across our country. And at the same time, I also know that there are structures that us as DNC members and state party chairs have been watching for decades that know that it is an unfair balance. What the DNC really does is not only is only the state party elected people making up about 30% of the DNC, they then weigh heavy on at-large appointments. And those folks are usually from DC or from New York and California. And they essentially vote the way that the chair, or in this case, the president and his administration want them to, rather than making sure that what the DNC is doing is reflective of the work that we have to do at the local, the county, and the state level in order to get Democrats elected. If you've read any part of my book, Harvest the Vote, you know that I deeply believe in state party infrastructure. And yes, it can be frustrating. Some state parties, including our own, still have things that we need to make better, but that's where candidates from the top of the ticket all the way down from school board have access to the voter file, a great postage permit, and all the infrastructure that you need to run and win a successful election. So what we've decided is we're tired of complaining about it. We're tired of writing blogs about it. We're tired of only talking to reporters about it. We want to make structural change in the DNC that we know will reflect more resources going down to the state level. So what are some of those things? I included a link in the chat that you can share with whoever you want. This really describes some of the basic reforms that we are asking for. It also has a link that you can share. You are part of a state party, if you're part of a state central committee or part of a county party or are part of a caucus or council within your state party, please share this link with your DNC members so that at least every state has a state party chair, a state party vice chair, and then 2 DNC members, a committee man and a committee woman. Every state has, some states have many more DNC members than that, but every state at least has those 4. So in your state, find out who those are and send them this link and ask them to be part of these reforms or to contact me for more information. When I tell you things like the superdelegates are back on the table for conversation to bring back, that should obviously raise a lot of alarm. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we're pushing, that we're not going to bring back superdelegates, that we're going to honor and respect the votes of people at the grassroots level. Another thing, which should sound like common sense, is that DNC members and state party chairs have access to a detailed line item budget of the DNC. When we go to DNC meetings and we go into our budget and finance meetings, we don't see a budget. We see a beautiful PowerPoint presentation, which is very helpful to summarize the budget. But if we want to know how much dollars are really going to the states, where did it go, what states are getting the resources, what consultants are we paying, is it diverse, both regionally and racially? All these questions, you know your values by your budget. We don't get to see the budget. As a DNC member, I've never seen the budget. As an executive director of the Young Democrats, I never saw the DNC budget. That has to change. So those are just some of the few reforms that we're pushing. You can see other reforms in the document that I included in the link. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. But I really want to emphasize, the only way that we can change our party is to also be on the inside. We need to push from the outside. I happily push from the outside as well, but there's a lot of change and a lot of relationships that can be formed on the inside. And the Rules and Bylaws Committee is meeting right now as we speak, and they have several meetings scheduled for the next several months. And they are going to be reforming how the primary presidential process happens. Right now, the potential proposal is that 5 states will share the early primary schedule. Those could or could not include the initial primary states, which are the traditional states of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. They may be those 4 states. They may be completely 4 new states with an additional 5. But the only way that we can make sure that those are representative of regions, representative of racial geographic, representative rural, urban, suburban, is if we get involved in that rules and bylaws process. So join us, share this link, and let's make sure that we're constantly pushing for reform on the outside as well as on the inside.
Thank you so much for that outstanding presentation. We do have some questions for you, and we'd love to hear you tell the hundreds on Zoom and the 2,000 plus listeners on the phones what kind of leverage you think you have now, and what kind of leverage you think you can build to do the kind of organizing that you've told the Washington Post that we're working on right now to make fundamental change to the party.
The only thing that kind of moves the DNC to positions that we're more supportive of for reform is if we start to whip votes. You got to organize votes. So that's exactly what we're doing. We already have 50 DNC members signed up. We want to have 100 by the next time the DNC meets in this fall. So we have 50 more to go. So that's why it's critical, you as the grassroots who are in every single one of our states and territories, contact your DNC members, ask them to be part of this reform. The only thing that moves them is if they know that we can vote for these reforms. If we bring them to the floor of DNC meetings, or some of the reforms are much bigger bylaw changes, we're going to have to bring those to the DNC National Convention. But that's the only way that we'll be able to do that, is if we have votes to back up our words.
Have the recent struggles that the Democratic Party has undergone really since President Obama's election in 2008, starting in 2010, do you think that's caused any real soul searching or fundamental, post-mortem within the party that it needs to be more responsive to the needs of poor, struggling, and working class Americans?
You know, the frustrating thing is that is absolutely happening at the state level, because as a state party chair in every single state, whether you're blue, purple, or red, you're hearing from voters on a regular basis. You're hearing from your elected officials and your candidates about what they're hearing at the doors. You know, sometimes in big national organizations, they get stuck inside their bubble, and that certainly is happening to some extent. There's no question that Chair Harrison knows about the struggles that working class and middle class families are facing, as well as President Biden. But what happens then, beyond those amazing leaders, is then you get to the next level, where you have a lot of staff members who are deeply connected then to political consulting class. And then it's like just, you know, contracts getting shared with one another, rather than supporting the groups in the state parties that are doing the hard work every single day in our states, in our local communities. And so what we really advocate for is more resources going down to the state and local level, because that's where we know that they're closest to the solutions, they're closest to the issues. I don't need, quite honestly, a memo on how to message around Build Back Better or the COVID relief plan. I know how to talk about that because I'm a state party chair and I've worked for years in politics, just like all my other fellow state party chairs. What I need is resources to get the work done. I need resources to do partisan voter registration. So when people are registering for the first time, they're talking to a Democrat and they proudly join as a Democrat. I need money for vote by mail. I need money for canvassing, all the things that we know win elections. And I'll say that Howard Dean got this. In the DNC, for a brief moment in time, got this, where they were giving every single state party $25,000 a month. That is huge. If you're a red state, you can hire 2 to 3 staff members, and you have a budget then to focus on raising money for all your programming work. That went down to $2,500 during Obama. We were winning elections up and down the ballot in Dean years, and then it crashed. So let's go back to the model that we know works, which means putting resources into the states.
I want to thank you so much, Jane Kleeb. What a fascinating and important discussion about how we can build power within the Democratic Party and make the fundamental change that we deserve. The Progressive Bloc is voting later this year to set the 2024 DNC party rules and presidential primary calendar. Please, if you're on this call and you are a DNC member, please join us to discuss how we can organize together to make fundamental change. ourrev.us/DNC 2022. You did hear it right from Jane Kleeb, folks. This is all about building institutional power and putting real, not just putting progressive fighters in the party. There are plenty there. You heard from Jane Kleeb, but putting more power at the state and grassroots level and letting the organizers on the ground do the work that they can do and have done to elect progressives. We are not going to play with the deck stacked against us anymore. You can make a difference right now. Become a sustaining member of Our Revolution and help us tip the balance of power. Go to ourrev.us/2022 member. And if you're one of those thousands of folks on the phones, please press *3 and an operator will help you sign up. Now, back to Anna Marta.
All right, thank you so much, Jane. Thank you, Hal. In the next section, we are going to be talking to candidates, but before we do that, we have some exciting endorsement announcements for 2 amazing women running for Congress. who we hope to bring on an upcoming broadcast. First up, we want to announce that we are endorsing Jamie Mcplatt Skinner in Oregon's 5th District, who has a real shot at unseating Kurt Schrader, who is one of the biggest roadblocks in Congress, who is certainly one of the biggest roadblocks in the way of any real healthcare reform. Jamie is a former union member and the first out lesbian elected east of Oregon's Cascades, who has done the work on school board and Santa Clara City Council. Our other endorsed candidate is Nida Alam, who is running for Congress in North Carolina's 4th District. Nida is an outspoken progressive who served as political director for Bernie's 2016 presidential campaign. She was the first Muslim woman ever elected to public office in North Carolina, and she currently serves on the Durham County Commission, where she voted to raise the minimum wage for county employees to $15 an hour. And right now, let's go back to Hal for our first candidate in tonight's call, Erica Smith.
Thank you so much, Anna Marta, and I am excited, as you mentioned, to announce that our revolution is endorsing Erica Smith for U.S. Congress to represent the 1st Congressional District in North Carolina. Senator Smith is running a corporate-free campaign against a fellow state senator who votes often with Republicans. Erica has a record of taking on big energy, cash bail, and predatory lending, as well as fighting to expand healthcare access, raise the minimum wage, and protect reproductive rights and our climate. If you have questions for Erica and you're in Zoom, please put them in the Q&A. If you're on the phones, press *3 to pass along your question to an operator. And now, Erica Smith, it's really my pleasure to welcome you. I've been wanting to speak to you since we first talked about an hour ago about your race for Congress. How are you going to win it?
All right. Thank you so much, Hal. Thank you, everyone, for joining in this call. I just want you to know I am deeply honored and humbled by the Our Revolution endorsement. Over the summer and late fall, I participated in several of your calls, especially when we were trying to get Senator Nina Turner elected. And I'm so excited about the work that you're doing. I want to start off by just introducing myself for a little bit, and then I would love to entertain your questions. We have a huge opportunity in North Carolina to send a bold progressive to Washington, D.C. to represent communities and not corporations. I am a former 3-term state senator, and while in the state Senate, I fought to raise wage, I fought to expand Medicaid, end gerrymandering, and I took on racial injustice. I worked really hard to eliminate cash bail and secure investments for communities that have been left behind. I want a government that works for all of us and not just the wealthy and the well-connected. This race is deeply personal for me. And the reason I say that this is personal for me is because when I was a little girl growing up in eastern North Carolina, in Northampton County, on my family's farm, as watching my parents try to hold on to the land that my great-grandfather purchased as a sharecropper, whose parents were enslaved on that land. This was a community that was there for me. When I moved back home to help take care of my father when he got sick, and we wanted to make sure he had raised six children, 5 girls, 1 boy on this family farm, and he served his country well. And when Dad had early onset of dementia, I moved back home to help take care of him. This community was there for me. And then in 2012, when I lost my youngest son and had to navigate a broken healthcare system prior to his passing, this is a community that was there for me. And because this community was there for me all of those times, I want to be there for my community. My community is under attack. It's under attack from a racial gerrymander that is threatening to rob our representation. We are under attack by wages that have stagnated, corporations that are hollowing out our communities and polluting our air, and rural hospitals that are closing. I want to be there for this community. And I knew when G.K. Butterfield was stepping down, someone needed to step up, and that someone needed to be someone that this community knows and knows this community. Together, we are going to win a rural New Deal. We're going to secure universal broadband. We're going to take on corporate monopolies, raise the minimum wage, respect the dignity of work, create good paying, clean energy union jobs in the South. We're going to make these towns that our children don't need to move away from, but we want our children to be excited about being able to go off to college or go off in a career and then come back and raise their families here. We want to make this a place where you can live, where you can earn a respectable wage, and where you can retire. While I am the front runner in this race, and how you asked a great question, how are we going to win? We can't win it without the support of all of you. I'm the front runner in the race, but this is going to be a competitive primary, and it's one that we cannot afford to lose. I'm the only pro-choice candidate in this race. I'm the only pro-Medicaid, Medicare candidate in this race, and I am the only candidate who has worked hard to fight against voter suppression. I'm the only, my likely GOP opponent, as we all know, was literally at the January 6th insurrection, and she's been endorsed by radical right-wing congresspeople like Madison Cawthorn and Marjorie Taylor Greene. We can't afford to lose this race, and by energizing our base with bold transformational policies and by broadening our coalition with aggressive organizing and rejection of corporate politicians and a broken DC status quo, with the help of all of you, that's how we're going to win this race. And so I'll end with this. Do you want an America that invests in workers and pays teachers their worth? Do you want an America that dismantles racism and builds systems of equity instead? Do you want an America that leads the world in addressing the climate emergency? Do you want an America that feeds its families with family farms and not corporate farms? An America where everyone is guaranteed broadband, healthcare, a living wage, clean air and clean water, and a roof over their heads. An America where your block is not your blessing and your zip code does not determine your destiny. Well, if that is the America that you want, you can't even spell that America without Erica. I am Erica Smith. I'm one of us for all of us, and one of us who will fight for us.
That's great, Erica. I'm going to do the hand clicks. I won't be clapping, but I love that. And I know you were saying you were going to close, but I do want to give this quote out because it is so powerful and it really goes along with what you said. Our communities deserve more than a GoFundMe healthcare system and a dollar store economy. Can you talk about that in the context of your vision for a rural New Deal?
Absolutely. So I'm running a campaign that is very much centered around the promise to deliver a rural New Deal. And what I mean by a rural New Deal, as a public school educator and former engineer, I have seen the disconnect with our students, disconnect with our communities needing access to telemedicine, and they can't get it until we have high quality, free broadband for every American. And I'm excited about this bold proposal for this rural community. It's a community that has been underserved and underrepresented for far too long. Part of my rural New Deal includes breaking up big ag. We are taking on issues like right to repair and making sure that small farmers and not the corporate farmers have the access to the capital that they need. We want to take on corporate monopolies, holding corporations responsible for all of this price gouging. And I know all of us that are on this call are livid by this, and how the coal barons and gas companies are making so much right now and passing that burden on to us, the consumers and hardworking Americans. I have a vision for a unionized South where the dignity of work is recognized by raising the living wage, and also a healthcare system that's transformed by prioritizing community over corporate profits, so we can start reopening many of our rural health centers and hospitals who've had to close down labor and delivery rooms because we did not expand Medicaid in North Carolina, and we are fighting for Medicare for all. Part of this rural New Deal, last but not least, it incorporates all of these important policy proposals and ideas that are bold policies that meet this moment and meet the rural communities in a place that they are desperately in need of and what they deserve.
I just wanted to say there's one thing I'm sorry about when I'm talking to you, Erica, and I can't vote for you because I don't live in CD1 North Carolina, because you have just totally converted me to, I am an Erica Smith supporter, 100%.
Thank you so much.
You go to Congress. We need you there. Thank you so much. Erica Smith's joining us. And we want to elect great progressive North Carolina candidates. Erica Smith, you just met. Nita Alam, we also support. They need your help. Now is the time to join our 2022 phone bank force. Start making calls to get out the progressive vote for these champions, and you'll earn rewards along the way. If you have just one extra hour a week or two, you can be part of our Grow and Get Out the Vote community and make an impact on these critical primary elections. This is our shot to grow our share of power. How? Well, it's obvious. By electing Erica Smith to Congress, by electing Nita Alam. Sign up at the link in the chat, ourrev.us/phonebank. And now over to you, Anna Morda.
Thank you so much, Hod. It was a great segment with Erica. And now I'm very excited to introduce our next guest, Anna Maria Archila, who is a decades-long leader in New York and nationally in the fight for worker justice and human rights. And now she's running to become New York's lieutenant governor, along with Jumaane Williams, who is also an Our Revolution endorsed candidate for governor. And I'm thrilled to announce that we are endorsing Anna Maria too. Anna Maria will make a fantastic lieutenant governor for New York. She came to the US from Colombia at age 17 and said that she wants to serve her state because New York welcomed her as a young immigrant and supported her with its thriving LGBTQ community. If you have questions for Anna Maria, and if you are in the Zoom, please put them in the Q&A section. If you are on the phones, and we know that we have at least 2,200 members on the phones right now, please put them in the Q&A, or of course, if you're on the phone, press *3 and an operator will take your question down. Anna Maria, welcome to the call. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Tell us a little bit about this race. I know you have been busy out on the field, campaigning, bird-dogging, rallying. Let us know what you are doing and how you're organizing to win.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Buenas noches. What an honor it is to be with all of you tonight. Our Revolution family has made so much possible for so many of us. So I want to start by expressing my deep gratitude to all the members who across the country are fighting to make sure that workers have dignity in the workplace, that young people have the opportunity to pursue their dreams, that parents have the opportunity to spend time with their babies, and that we all have what we need to thrive. I came to this country when I was 17, and I was so lucky to find my way into the immigrant rights movement. I started out in 2001 as an immigrant rights organizer in a tiny storefront on the North Shore of Staten Island, one of the most forgotten corners of New York City, in a community of day laborers, folks who were working very long hours, and who were young people, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids who had crossed the border by themselves and were sending money home, working in construction, working in restaurants, working in delis. And after these very long hours of work, they would come to this tiny storefront where I was, and they would say, okay, I'm ready to learn. And it was like 7 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And what I learned from them, and what I learned by being in that community of immigrant workers, was that our dreams are a very powerful force. And even in the midst of a lot of exploitation and a lot of extraction of our labor and our energy, our dreams still pulse very strongly. And they are what allow us to keep imagining that life can be better, that our own life and the life of our children can be better, and that actually our country can be better. And it was by being in that community that I realized that I could that I didn't have to move around the world in this country as a guest, that I could make this country my home by fighting for it to be better. And I've spent the last 20 years building community organizations and national organizations that are rooted in working class communities, that are rooted in immigrant communities, Black and brown communities, that allow working class people to be powerful in our democracy, that allow us to demand what we deserve, fight for it, and very often win it. And so I built Make the Road New York, an organization of immigrants in New York, one of the largest immigrant rights organizations in the country, which then went on to grow and build sister organizations in 5 other states, including Nevada. You might remember when Bernie won Nevada, he thanked the members of Make the Road Nevada because they fought really, really hard to make sure that not just Bernie would win, but that the dreams of immigrant workers were at the center of the vision for the future of the country. And I helped build a national organization called the Center for Popular Democracy that has been fighting to make sure that we build a more just country, fighting for Medicare for all, fighting to make sure, fighting against tax cuts for billionaires during the Trump era, really working very hard to protect healthcare, to fight back against the nominations of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, and others. And after doing this work for 20 years, I decided that I wanted to throw my hat in the ring. Because in New York, the governor's office has been an obstacle to progress, has been the hill we have to climb when we want to win protections for tenants, has been the hill we have to climb when we want to win the inclusion of immigrant workers in unemployment insurance or healthcare, the hill we have to climb when we want to win investments in education. And the reason why it is that is because the governor's office has been encircled by donors from real estate, from Wall Street, from pharma, from oil industries that managed to gain tremendous amounts of influence over the executive branch at the expense of the lives and the dreams and the safety of regular New Yorkers, of working class people. And so even though I have not been an elected official, I have not actually organized my life around becoming an elected official, after the pandemic, after witnessing what happened to Latino communities, Black communities, working class communities, poor folks in the country, the way that the things that we lost, the things that we sacrificed, and also what we contributed to make sure that everyone would be safe, it felt just simply unacceptable to allow New York to be led into the politics of business as usual, the politics of just doing a little bit for working class people and giving a lot of subsidies to real estate moguls. The politics where instead of investing in childcare, we invest in stadiums. And so I decided to add my voice, my energy, my experiences of 20 years organizing to really honor the contributions of our communities, to make sure that in the state of New York, we're not just celebrating immigrants as essential, but actually meeting them with policies that honor their contributions, to make sure that in New York, people can afford the places where they live. We have a real crisis of affordability in the state of New York. Most people are constantly worried about not being able to pay their rent, not being able to pay their utilities, not being able to make ends meet. And it doesn't have to be that way. New York is actually a tremendously resource rich state, but it is also one of the most unequal states. And it is that because we have the influence of dark money in our political system, especially the industries of Wall Street and real estate, really dominating the policies. And at the start of this year, in the middle of the Omicron wave, the governor of New York decided to lift the moratorium on evictions. And then she proposed a budget that basically made no investments in climate, even though last year people drowned in their basement apartments and the subway flooded during a hurricane. She made a decision not to include immigrant workers in the budget, in healthcare or in unemployment insurance, even though the same workers were the ones who took care of children, took care of elderly, delivered our food, farmed our food, transported our food. So, and many other decisions sort of speak to an orientation that is more towards protecting the interests of those that are already comfortable and that are already well, instead of the interests of working class people. And I feel like in this moment, we need to fight. I am very used to fights that are very difficult. If that were not the case, I would not have been part of the immigrant rights movement for 20 years. And I am also used to doing fights that actually force the stories of our people to the center of the policy debates. And that's what I want to make of this campaign, a campaign that celebrates the courage of people who organize to demand respect in the workplace, the courage of young people who fight for their dreams, the courage of people who took care of one another during the pandemic, who brought food to one another after hurricanes. I want this campaign to honor the courage of people. And I want us to have in government people who will always prioritize the interests of the families that are being crushed between jobs that don't pay enough and housing and childcare costs that are too high. And if I am elected, I would be the first Latina elected statewide. I would be the first generation immigrant elected statewide, the first queer person elected statewide. But those were not the things that motivated me to run. The things that motivated me to run was to really, give this lesson that I learned really early on of the way that our dreams coexist with our struggles, to do what I can to make sure that we have more space for our dreams and that our struggles and our challenges occupy less of our energy and our daily lives. So I am really excited to receive this endorsement because I think our revolution really embodies this idea that when we are able to envision the country we deserve and when we lean into that vision and band with others and fight for it, we actually make it more possible every day. And I'm so, so grateful to be here and for this opportunity to speak with all of you tonight.
Thank you so much, Ana Maria, for highlighting this lifelong track record of helping working families. And I just wanted to mention that from seeing you on the ground, you are campaigning like an organizer, and that makes a whole lot of difference. I see you out there rallying every single day, highlighting issues that matter to everyday folks. You and Jumani are running for the top executive seats in the state. Just one question for you. Can you tell our audience why it's so important for progressives to clinch positions of executive power and how they can help you do so?
Yes. I think that in the state of New York, like I was mentioning, and I think this is probably the case in many other states, the executive branch holds tremendous power over the decisions around budget, for example. New York has, in this moment, is negotiating a huge budget, the annual budget, and the governor, for example, Governor Hochul, is using this moment to give $600 million to a billionaire owner of the Buffalo Bills to build a stadium. This person made all his money with fracking. And instead of using those $600 million to invest in childcare or to make progress towards universal healthcare in New York or to make sure that communities across the country have subsidies for housing that is so expensive, she's giving it to a billionaire to build a stadium. And those are the kinds of powers that governors have, and in the case of New York, that Governor Hochul has. And in New York, it has been progressive legislators partnering alongside communities that are organizing, who have really made gains possible. Last year, for example, there was a really inspiring set of victories by organizations that banded together with legislators to make sure that millionaires who made so much money during the pandemic paid more in taxes so that we could actually invest in schools, actually invest in workers, actually invest in communities, and they made huge gains. So we should not be comfortable just with the idea that we are only going to make gains by through the champions in legislatures. We should really aspire to be the ones that govern, so that we are no longer having to battle these huge obstacles in the governor's offices, the obstacles that are really, surrounded by the corporate money that actually sort of blinds them and prevents them from actually acting on behalf of or prioritizing the interest of working class communities and working families. So I really think that we have to contest for power. We have to do it with seriousness. We have to do it very rooted in our values and with the conviction that, when we fight, we win. And last, I just want to remind people who may or may not know this, 4 years ago, my running mate, Jomani Williams, who's running for governor now, ran for lieutenant governor. And he got 47% of the vote. He came extremely close. If we had focused on that race, if we had invested more in that contest, he would be the governor today. Because in the state of New York, actually, twice in the last couple of administrations, the governors have gone down in scandal and lieutenant governors have stepped into the role of governing. So this is one of those situations where we have to sort of seize the opportunity, remember the lessons from the past, and contest for governing power for working class people.
All right, thank you so much, Ana Maria. We have to go, but we enjoyed having you on the call, and we are of course canvassing for you and Jomani with our teams all throughout New York State. So with that, back to Hal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ana Maria and Ana Marta. Let's go right to our third great candidate of night, Zachary Parker, running for Ward 5, DC Council. Good evening, Zachary. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, and I'll be as efficient as possible. I am Zachary Parker. I am a candidate for DC Council. I am the current Ward 5 representative on DC State Board of Education, and as you can imagine, I am an educator by background. I'm a former 7th grade math teacher in New Orleans. And for those that may not be familiar with DC's governance structure, DC is a very unique place where it's a city operating as a county, operating as a state, fighting for statehood. And we have a very narrow power structure where the DC Council governs essentially DC's legislative direction. A little bit about my vision and campaign. My vision is very simple. I'm running to build healthy communities for all Ward 5 neighbors, which is one of 8 wards in DC, where everybody would have their basic needs met. That connects to my own personal story, as I'm the youngest of 3 children born to my parents. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. Same parents, same community, same household, and my life looks very different than my brother's. My oldest brother works 40 hours plus a week. He doesn't have health insurance. He barely makes ends meet. And it just speaks to the economic violence that is running rampant in this country, where workers don't have basic protections. And even with working 40 plus hours a week, they can't always put food on the table. My middle brother sadly passed away in 2016, and I watched him struggle with the health industry and insurance companies that did everything possible not to cover basic healthcare access for him. And it is a reminder for me that our many systems chooses winners and losers, our economic, our political, our education systems, and many others. And my campaign is a vision for how do we fundamentally disrupt the systems that perpetuate poverty, that perpetuate violence and displacement and corruption in our government in DC, but also across the country. What separates me from the many candidates in the race in Ward 5, I'm the only current elected official in the race, and I bring real and current budget and policy experience. And that experience I leverage and plan to leverage on behalf of working class Washingtonians. Secondly, I've amassed the greatest amount of grassroots support. I'm proud to have your support and be in community with you. And that speaks to the work I've been doing in my community for many years. Most importantly, I'm the only candidate in my race not tied to corporate lobbyists or government politicos. And there is a will and a desire to keep things going as they always have, where those in the inside game get to pick the next council member, but we're running to fundamentally disrupt that. And with your support, we're confident we can do it. If you're interested in learning more, I would encourage you to visit Zachary4ward5.com. I'll be sure to drop it in the chat as well. But again, the election will be June 21st. And so we're about 85 days away from deciding who the next Ward 5 council member will be, who will have a say in DC's $19 billion budget, who will be able to fight for working class Washingtonians and serve as a model for the direction of the nation's capital. So again, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, it's great to meet you, Zachary. Great to hear you, and really very powerful presentation in support of your candidacy. One question that kind of arose in my mind, and this also came to my mind when I was listening to Erica Smith earlier and Anna Maria, is you are all great progressives. Why is it such a heavy lift to elect people who make such a powerful argument? It just seems evident you, Zachary Parker, are the right person for this position. And, you know, we did back Janice Lewis George a couple of years ago. We want you to join her, but it does seem like it's such a heavy lift. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would say two things. And primarily it's because we're up against propaganda. The propaganda machines for protecting police institutions, protecting wealth, protecting millionaires in the nation's capital and across the country are going nonstop. It is everywhere around us, from media to the way in which organizations are operating. And so when you have a candidate that is advocating for basic common sense policies like everyone deserves housing as a right, that is up against the winds of propaganda. And so with that, progressive candidates have to beat that by educating voters and building diverse coalitions that can bring voters along. And again, that is what we're hoping and planning to do for the next 45 days with your help, to just make sure we make the case why it's important. And for instance, why our seniors cannot continue with the status quo that is further displacing them, that is further putting them at a disadvantage, where Black and brown residents in Washington, D.C. are being victimized by our police institutions, where millionaires and those making hundreds of thousands of dollars are paying fewer amount in taxes than those making $30,000. And so again, by educating people, pushing against the propaganda, and with the right coalition, we can get it done.
Zachary Parker for Ward 5, Zachary for Ward 5, and that's also for Ward 5. I caught that, by the way, Zachary. It took me a little bit of time, but I figured it out. I'm curious, you have definitely made affordable housing an important part of your campaign. Do you see that as kind of the key issue? Is there a key issue, or are there intersecting issues that are crucial for the folks who live in Ward 5?
Yeah, it is one of the most important issues. The top three issues for Ward 5 voters and many Washingtonians is violence and how to address rising violence, which is an issue across the country, affordable housing, and how do we deal with the rapid gentrification that is taking place in many parts of DC, where many native Washingtonians are being pushed out at a rapid pace. And we're seeing new developments of luxury housing and $1 million homes popping up all over the place. Another thing I would just say is progressive candidates are up against the deep pocket millionaires that are benefiting from the status quo. And so there's a group, for instance, Democrats for Education Reform, or DFER, that has a national presence, but they also waged a battle and a war on Janice Lewis George, which she was able to overcome. But we anticipate that they will weigh in into this race. And so they will dump no less than $100,000 in this race, in this very local race, to control power. And so progressives, the only way to beat organized money is through organized people. And again, with your help, we can make sure we can fight back against that. But yes, affordable housing, what I'm advocating for is for government action for permanently affordable housing, to seize land through co-op housing, community land trust development, and making sure that we prioritize people over the profit of developers, which is a trend in DC.
I want to thank you so much, Zachary Parker for Ward 5 in DC, just down the road from me, and I'll be working with you and your campaign. Really looking forward to continuing that relationship in the days, weeks, and months to come. And with that, we really are coming up at the very hard break at the end of our program tonight. What great candidates. Anna Marta, over to you to close us out.
All right. Thank you so much, Hal. Inspiring candidates. I just want to bring the conversation back to Medicare for All just for a second. Tomorrow, a reminder, the House Oversight Committee is holding a hearing, and we are rallying in front of the building at 8:15 a.m. Join us the link is in the chat for you all. become an Our Revolution member. That's always an important ask. You can click on the chat. Link is in the chat for you, or you can join by pressing *3 and an operator will sign you up. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this important conversation. As we close out our calls with our chant, which is when we organize, we win. So unmute your microphone and chant with me. When we organize, we win.
When
we organize, we win.
we win.
When we organize, we win.
We win.